I call Mark Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Chair. It's my pleasure to take a call on part 2 of the Parental Leave Employment Protection 6 months paid leave and work contract hours amendment bill, and to talk about the 26 weeks of proposed paid parental leave. I was a bit worried about Mr Prosser because a burst blood vessel is actually really bad for your health, Richard. I want to acknowledge Clayton and the contribution that he's made. I'd invite him to get up and make another one. And I just want to, Mr Lees Galloway's getting excited over there again.
So here we go.
But sorry, Mr Chair, you're right. So what I'd like to do is just, I'd like to address some comments that the sponsor of the bill, Sue Moroney, made in her speech. And that is around, it's the third time that I've heard tonight where the announcement that was made today around the Defence White Paper, and if you'll bear with me, Mr Chairman, these comments were made by the sponsor of the bill, and the fact that the government has committed $20 billion over the next 15 years to invest back into our New Zealand Defence Forces. But I just want to highlight the fact that, in actual fact, in terms of spend in New Zealand, we commit about 1.1% of our GDP annually to our NZDF, our New Zealand Defence Forces. And if we compare that to say, the US, which I haven't fact-checked this. I am concerned about the blood pressure as well, Mr Chair, but I haven't fact-checked this. But I think the US is about 3.4.
Point of order, Denise Roche.
Mr Chair, in the previous parts, we've had lots of instructions to keep our comments to within the part that we are discussing in the bill, and I really think the speaker on that side has gone off point.
Well, thank you for your guidance. Relevancy is a matter for the chairman and the chair at the time. I had the privilege of listening to that debate on the radio as I was driving down, which says more about me than anything. But I'll invite the member who has the call, Mark Mitchell, to continue and make his point succinctly.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So if we look at Australia, and again, I think that the Defence Minister commented today when he, at his press conference, they're about 2.1. Yeah. They're about 2.1.
You're not doing it. So
Canada's pretty close to us. But I want to make reference. I want to make reference to the fact that the sponsor of the bill highlighted the investment into New Zealand Defence Forces as if to say, if we can make that type of investment as a country, then we should be able to take that money and allocate it to paid parental leave. But they're two totally different, separate issues. And actually, if you're talking about the health and well-being of our children, actually the security of our country and our economic zone is actually pretty important to the health and well-being of our children. And I watched with great interest the debate in the House of Commons in the UK towards the end of last year, where the chairman of the Defence Committee got up and made a very compelling argument for increased spending actually in their defence forces, because the threats and the security situation globally.
The member's been given as much latitude as he's going to get, and he either gets to part 2 or he sits down. I notice he's currently sitting down.
I'm coming into land. I'm coming into land.
No, he can't come to it eventually. He's got to come to it now.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So my point is that I can't make the link between saying that the government has committed to an additional $20 billion of funding over 15 years for our New Zealand Defence Forces and money that we're talking about now over the next 4 years for paid parental leave. Because the reality of the matter is that, and we spoke about it earlier in the night, is that when this government came into office, Mr Chair, we were facing deficits for a decade. The Finance Minister and our economic team and Cabinet and caucus have been fiscally disciplined around making sure that we get the country back into a surplus, which is what we've done. It might be a thin one, but it's growing every year. And that will provide opportunities, and that will provide, in the coming years, decisions for the government to make where that additional money and funding will be spent. Or, of course, the decision will always be, do we continue to pay down debt? Because if we're talking about kids, the last thing I want is our children or our grandchildren inheriting a debt that we have built up over time because we've been irresponsible in the way that we have spent the money that comes in. I think that the argument that the opposition whip put up around tax cuts is, let's understand one thing. If we make a tax cut, well, he's pretending, maybe he's the pretend whip, I don't know. He seems to be a lot more vocal than the whip tonight, put it that way. But the point that I'd make is that if the government decides to make a tax cut...
Clayton Mitchell.
Chair, it's wonderful to take a call in part 2 of tonight's bill. Parental